forget. Great. All right, now we're just a couple minutes early here, so we will allow a few more attendees to jump on in, and they're coming in. There they go. This is the moment, ladies, where my Zoom anxiety just drifts away. I see that number tick up, and I'm like, there it goes. Like everything just worked, at least so far. It's great. Oh, the Zoom
Heads
gods
up,
have
Miss
smiled
Barnaby's
upon
on the
us.
line, everybody.
Yeah.
Miss Barnaby.
Yeah. I see some familiar faces. Catherine, Melissa.
Yep, Megan, this is a webinar, so the cameras are off and you're all muted, but I do believe there's a way to like raise your hand if you wanted to hop in and heckle anybody, then of course, I can probably grant you that permission.
No heckling.
Megan's like, I don't need to heckle anybody just yet. Okay. All right. So people are rolling on in. That's great. We're right at the top of the hour. I want to give it just one more minute and allow some more friendly names to hop on.
Okay, that chat's going.
There it goes.
We love that chat going.
I think it'd be so fun to hear where everybody's from today too, because I feel like we might have quite a diverse group.
Yeah,
online.
that's
I know.
true.
I'm coming in from Denver.
Yeah, maybe everyone can put their where they're coming in from in the chat.
Yeah.
Delhi.
Yeah. What would be fun is where you're at and where you want to be at. I feel like that would be another interesting data point here. Okay, so all right, people are coming on in. I think it's about time to
We got a
get
Tempe from Megan.
off.
Hot
Okay.
down there, Megan.
LA.
LA.
Megan, you're so close. You can just hop the pond right over on that side. All right, so I would like to officially
We have someone from Delhi.
welcome Denver, but in Houston. Oh, we got a few Houstons. Okay. All right. Well, I think it's about time to get this party started. So I would like to welcome everybody and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Kalia Garrido. I head up events and marketing here at Great Data Minds. So quick bit about us, if you don't already know us, we are a collection of passionate data activists, and we're on a mission to modernize the world of data. So we do this in two different ways. The first is that we have a services arm at greatdatamindsinnovationlabs.com. This is where we do our strategic education, planning, the deployment of our critical data projects. And then we have Great Data Minds, and this is where we have our events and our community. And this is an example of one of the great events that we hold that we're doing here today. So we're excited to get it kicked off. Today's event is actually focused around our Great Data Minds Humans group. And so here at Great Data Minds, we're committed to helping promote, educate, and inspire the people that make up the lifeblood of the data community. And so in our session today, we've gathered a group of amazing people to help kind of take us through this really, for me, it's going to be really inspirational conversation. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get kicked off. This is a webinar, so like we talked about really early on, your cameras and your microphones are off, but we do welcome live conversation in the chat. And I see that everybody is already jumping in there and using it. That's great. Feel free to add your questions as we go along. I'll do my best, sort of serving as your MC here, to collect the questions, sort of organize them and send them out to the panelists at the end. Or you can save your questions till the end, because like I said, we're going to have like about 10-15 minutes at the end to be able to ask specific questions to our expats and nomads. And so today we are very excited. We have seen a fantastic number of RSVPs come through on this event. So we can tell that everybody out there is just as excited as we are about this topic. Very timely, very relevant right now for a lot of us. And to kick us off, I would like to hand it over to my business partner and mentor and friend, Julie Burroughs, who is our Chief Executive Officer here at Great Data Minds.
Hey, everybody. Hey, all 207 registrations, 208 just came, the 208th one just came in. So they'll keep coming, but thank you for joining us today. We're really excited. You're looking at three of my besties, four of them actually, including Kalia. And I have known these women for 20 plus years. Don't be mad at me. For 20 plus years. And the great news is they all know each other individually too. So they've spent time either cocktailing, traveling, working together, even without me around. So we've got a great program today. We're very excited to see so many people so interested in this subject right now. So Kalia, you want to start with the introduction slides? Kalia? Did you freeze? Uh-oh.
I'm happy to just start with my own introduction if you'd like.
You know what? Hold on 1 second. I think I can get them up. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Am I back? It was me.
Yeah, you're back.
Just me though, right?
Yeah. You want to try
Yeah,
again?
no, we're all good, Kaylee. Without
We're all
you.
good.
Ladies, mini heart attack, working through it. I'm so glad it was just me. I'll try again. But if this doesn't
Zoom
work
stress.
out,
Zoom
then
stress.
Julie, you'll have to do it. I'm going to give it one more shot.
Okay.
That
You
was
can do
scary. That was scary. I'm going to click it.
it.
How's that?
All right.
Whew. Can you see it?
Yep. Yay.
All right. I'm not touching anything.
All right. Let's hear it, Sid.
Okay. Well, thanks, Julie, for putting this together. I think last night we had dinner together and we're approaching 30 years of friendship for sure.
Yep. Yep.
So I've been expatting since 2006. My first expat gig was kind of the standard one where Whole Foods Market brought me over to the UK with the awesome expat package of paying for accountants and housing and giving you a stipend, kind of something that doesn't exist as much today. And that was my first experience. After that, I lived on an island off the coast of France, the island of Jersey, but then went back to work for a company based in the US. So I was a US based employee, but I worked on the island of Jersey for 5.5 years, stayed with the same company and then moved to the Caribbean and worked from the island of Curacao. Jumped back to the States for a bit and then have been working from the Netherlands, both as an entrepreneur where I had my own company, which I sold to a Canadian company. And now I'm doing independent consultant for a company in California from the Netherlands. So have been through a few different structures, tax implications, and business relationships. And I'm happy to talk about that as we go through this.
What about Bernie?
Oh, and that's our new car, Bernie. And that's my husband in the tent. That's how you go camping in the Netherlands. Very different from camping in Colorado, which I'll be doing starting this afternoon.
We kindly refer to him as the Dutchman.
Yeah, there's the Dutchman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Patty Klauer, and Julie, I think it's been 25 years for us.
Okay, come on now.
But so I've been living in Mexico on the shore of Lake Chapala for 4 years this month. And I've, the boat ride is with some of my besties here in Lake Chapala for a birthday. We went out on the boat, and one of my, this is the lake. This picture at the bottom right is, probably a 2-minute walk from my house. That's what I do every morning. And I even have my pictures from this morning on my phone, that I took in the same spot. But I moved here 4 years ago because basically my passion right now is to bring the future forward for the planet. And I've done a lot of large scale technology change initiatives for my entire career. And now I'm sort of looking at, and then I've also been a lifelong meditator. So I'm kind of combining both of those and bringing all of that forward with a project around the conscious attention economy through future capital. And so living here has allowed me to actually have this international global reach with people, but also be very grounded in a local community where I work at a food bank and stuff. So anyway, that's me. Oh, and that's me there in my Day of the Dead outfit. So
That's awesome. That is so awesome.
Hi.
Hi.
So I was living in San Francisco and definitely ready for a change. Have a company with my husband importing wine, Italian wine. He's Italian, and also a tech company working for small biotechs, and pretty much working myself to death in California. Kind of sick of cost of living and wanting a change. So during 2020, we started looking for a house to move to part-time, and then realized, well, I'm working here full-time. Why not make it a full-time residence? So that's what we did. And we bought a house outside of Florence, Italy, in the countryside. So this is a picture of our new doggie, Penny. And she loves the countryside, as do I and my husband. So just kind of a simple life, a very different life, and a lot of travel around Europe, and a lot of great dinners and parties, and a different lifestyle, much happier.
We visited
Still
Christina.
working.
We visited
Still have
Christina.
the two companies.
She has a house in the village, one of the, as you can see behind there, and you could just, the locals were like, who is this blonde woman that has a house up there? It's a famous house in the village. And they're just like, who is she anyway? You know, so you're getting to know everyone down there though, right?
Absolutely.
Yep. They all
Every
love
day,
it.
walk into town.
Yep.
Town.
Okay, and that's me. So I'm the only person that isn't an expat yet, but I'm working on it. The guy to the right is keeping me from it, but I'm working on it. But the good news is we travel a lot. We even internationally, we do it a lot, but we go to our friends' homes around the country. Key West, Tammy Barnaby's on here, one of my besties. And I work out of homes of my friends, other people that are on my team. And the great news is we advocate that our team at Great Data Minds, GDM Innovation Labs, does the same. So I leave September 9th for Slovenia, which you see up there in the left-hand corner, and we'll be there for 4 months. And welcome anyone that would like to hear more about Slovenia, reach out, please. And that's all I got to say. And I'm ready to start asking my questions of the girls. All righty. All right, let's start with the biggest question. What do you love about it? What are the benefits of it living abroad?
Well, I'll start because, I expound on this all the time. So what I really love about living where I live in Mexico, I live in a small town, so I don't live in a big city like Christine. I'm living on the shore of Lake Chapala. And what I love is being in a generous, warm-hearted culture. People don't have a lot, but they give a lot of themselves. So the values aren't just about how much money you make and all the things you have and trying to keep up an expensive lifestyle. People live very simply here, and I live right by the lake. So on the Sundays, families are just, not just Sundays, but every evening, families are down there having dinner on the picnic benches by the lake. The kids are playing. You walk down the street and everyone says, greets you, buenos dias, buenas tardes, whatever it is. Every single person, including like 14-year-old boys, and everyone really, you just feel like you're part of the community. So that's the thing I love the most. And Day of the Dead, which is an awesome, awesome party.
Sidro? Oops.
You're on mute, Sid.
I've lived in the Netherlands since 2018, and the thing I always say is just a kind country. And I appreciate the work-life balance and the mentality. So the benefits are, you're on the doorstep or a part of Europe, which is extremely culturally diverse. I live in a place where people really value work-life balance, but yet there's a really talented and engaged, very diverse community in Amsterdam, a 45-minute train ride from my house. So, and I've also loved the other places I live just because, the difference between traveling and living somewhere is exponentially different, and the amount that you learn about the local cultures and lifestyles and the connections you make are totally different. And the experiences I had living in the Caribbean versus the island, a tax haven, the island of Jersey or in London, were completely different, but all made me a more appreciative and well-rounded human.
Great.
So I love the community I live in as well. It's just this very simplistic life of walk down the hill every day, see what the little alimentary has for produce, go to the meat market guy, get some meat to grill, have a cappuccino, talk to the neighbors, head back up the hill with the dog. And then we've built this great community here of not just neighbors, but people from Florence and people that come to visit us, and just kind of hanging together and enjoying the diversity of everyone and just enjoying life together. And we have a lot of people from Florence come up and say it's really special to be able to share dinners and times together, and just the feeling that we have with, and a big part of that I think is the property surrounded by the woods and nature, and just there's a vibe here that I love so much.
Great. Sid and Christine, you'd also have to say the rail system is great too. I know Sid does overnight
course.
trains, and I wish we had it. We take advantage of it when we're over there, but that's another great.
And
benefit.
the bikes in Holland.
the
Like
bike.
I didn't, Bernie's the first car I bought, and lived here 4 years and survived on bikes and trains, which is
Yeah.
awesome.
I have driven twice in a year and a half.
Okay, ladies. So that's what you love, but what do you miss? Sid, you're going to say green chilies. I know.
Yeah, hatch green chilies for sure. I mean, food and friends. One thing about living expat, and I'm sure the other gals will agree, it takes a bit to build your tribe. So I still have a big tribe in the States that I do miss, though they come over a lot. And then the two things in the Netherlands I miss, the natural beauty that you have in the US, like the national park system. It takes a little bit more work in Europe to find like a Yosemite type experience. But yeah, it's food, friends, and that. But for me, it's worth it.
Patty?
Almost the same. I had a friend just came back and brought me some hatch green chilies.
Like you're not surrounded by them down there?
Well, they don't have hatch, and she brought them back, right? And so, but yeah, family, I mean, there's certain, experiences that you want to go back and be with your family a little bit more often, be able to drop in and stuff, and I have a great community here. So I have, friends as family, but, I think that's the biggest thing. Other than that, I think the same thing Sid said. I'm in Mexico and there's a lot of natural beauty here, but, in Mexico, you just have to be more careful when you're traveling. And, I don't feel like as a single woman, I can just go, take off and, go out and into the wilderness the way, I used to live in New Mexico, and I'm just used to those big open spaces and being able to drive, a lot and be out hiking and stuff like that. And I have to be a little bit more careful about that. And I don't have that kind of experience, but everything else is here. Everything's here.
Yeah, we have great food here, but I do miss some things like sushi, and I have my list where I ask people to bring it in their luggage for me. So usually around like ramen noodles, to cook, chilies as well, Chipotle. Yeah, my family doesn't really travel much, so that's tough. I miss them. And, some friends don't get out here very often or at all. So that's what I miss the most.
Yeah.
But I definitely have a lot of like natural beauty here. So I think I'm fortunate. I actually live next to a national park. So,
Yep.
and then I have the city close by too.
And all that great art in Florence.
Yeah, but since I'm kind of in the middle of nowhere, it's difficult to, you can't order things online. you have to go to a store and it's, half the day. And in Italy, you have a specific store for each thing.
So I see a lot of the chat going on over there and a lot of the questions that are being asked. We'll get to you with those, but I think we're going to cover a lot of them here in a few minutes. So, all right. During our prep call, we talked about an ideal employer. If you're working abroad, what does that ideal employer look like to you?
Myself. Yeah. I mean, basically, if you work for yourself, you can work anywhere, right? And in terms of ideal employers, I mean, when I first came here, I was working for a company in the States. I was on the same time zone even. So there was actually no change. And I was only showing up in their office a few days a month. So I'm only 35 minutes from the airport at Guadalajara. So it was seamless. Actually, it was easier for me to fly there from here than it was from Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I used to live. It was harder to get there. So I'm not sure that, there was one instance, Julie, when you and I talked about doing a contract that I couldn't do because I was in Mexico because of the HIPAA regulation. So if the contract is with a company that you can't be out of the country because of HIPAA regulations, then that's a problem, But I also did international work with a Asian development bank over in the Philippines, and it was just, I just worked at night, like from 6 p.m. to midnight instead of during the day. So it was actually pretty seamless.
Yeah, I know a lot of my friends would like to travel, but they get locked down by their security too, and they can't, use their computers abroad. So there's that limitation.
I kind of see the gamut. When I worked at GDM, they had a kind of in the office always policy. And I was just super fortunate that they made an exception for me when I lived both on the island of Jersey and in the Caribbean. And there was some guilt associated with that. But the current client that I have, my primary client, the Shift Network, they have an all remote, 100% 70 plus employees. Everyone's remote, a lot of international contractors, and they even have policies in place. It used to be anyone could work from overseas up to a month a year, but they've expanded that as long as it doesn't have a tax implication to the company. So as I was looking to re-engage, I took a year sabbatical. I started looking at what companies, and for me, it was remote first companies. And it's just amazing the big cultural shift that's happened, thanks to COVID, of people just being a lot more open. And so I'd encourage people that if your current employer isn't really open to having remote or digital employees, to start networking and finding ones that are, because when it's ingrained in the culture, you're working within an environment that welcomes it and supports it versus one that doesn't.
And I've added that link that you shared with us, Sid, about the buildingremotely.com. So that's a good resource for people who are looking to find a 100% remote job.
Yep. By the way, I agree with you so much, Sid.
Yeah, and for me, I have my own company, but I have to find clients that are willing to work with me on the hours because the time zone's significantly different. And if they have certain deliverable dates, I have to be willing to work till 2 a.m. if that's what it takes. But I really right now have 3 clients that most of my calls are very early morning for them. And so they consider me to be like East Coast and even earlier. So that's the agreement we have. But again, if they need something from me, I am there to work as late as it takes. So I have to have a client that will kind of set expectations up front, and they're okay with that.
Yep. Great lead into the challenges. And that was one of the first things we talked about, because I know when I'm over there, it's hard. You start at, 1 o'clock and you work until the night, and you get used to it. Sure. But it's like, wow, it's tough. And you're asking your team to meet with you earlier, et cetera. You gave me great advice. So you said, ask your team to think of you as being on East Coast time. And so we did when we were over there last year for 45 days, that's what they did. But I think we all agree that, and Patty, I know you're lucky, you sit CST, right? You're central. So, but when you're over in Europe, man, it's tough. And God knows working in India and Asia, but we see people doing it all the time, right? Working with
Yep.
US.
Europe's good for working with people in India.
Yeah,
It's very close,
right.
time zone wise.
I think another challenge we identified was infrastructure, having Wi-Fi and you know, and Patty, tell them your story.
Well, this is Mexico. And so I've had Wi-Fi, but it was always going out, or I'd be in the middle of doing a presentation where it was like all me, and I'd have to jump on my cell phone as a hotspot because my Wi-Fi goes out 2 minutes before I start. So now I've got two Wi-Fi carriers. One's fiber optic, which I'm on right now. And hopefully I'm not freezing at all. If I was still on my other Wi-Fi carrier, which I kept for backup, it would be a lot slower, lot smaller bandwidth. So, but the cost of two Wi-Fi carriers, so I have the backup, is a total of $55 US a month to have both of them, and 120 megabits per second bandwidth. So I'm good.
You know, the one thing that I found, we're AT&T and it worked great in Europe. It was $10 a day, right? But I was able to use my phone to connect to very easily. So I know, Sid, sometimes you run into issues with using your phone over there, right? And like,
I just ended up getting a Dutch SIM card. So I have a US and a Dutch, I've got an iPhone, so you can have two SIM cards, and I manage that. I think for me, I might be a little bit different than everybody because my primary employer is based in California. I actually enjoy working the evenings because it lets me enjoy daylight, and and I'm a 3 to 4 day a week contractor with them. But I think that's part of it, is like find the lifestyle that you want and put the rules around it. If you're a morning person, you only want to have morning clients, that might limit the time zones you work in or how you work. But for me, I love, not having to plug in until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then, working through on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then having Friday free and all those daytimes free.
all right, let's talk about visas. And, what your status is. I know that we're going over and we booked in for 4 months into the EU. Based on Schengen, we can only be there 90 days. So we have to go out of Schengen region. The good news is Croatia hasn't signed on to Schengen yet. And for those of you that don't know what Schengen is, when you enter the EU, and you guys correct me if I say something wrong here because you know better than I do, you are under the rules of the Schengen area. So that limits you to 90 days within 180 days, if that makes sense. So Croatia, right next door to Slovenia, hasn't joined yet. They joined in 2023. So that's our savior. We're going over there to buy back some days and going to London and stuff like that. So other visas, I know we're seeing Nomad visas come up. Sid, you pointed them out to me first and foremost.
Yeah, I mean, my situation, because I'm married to a Dutchman, is I both in Curacao and the Netherlands have been able to have permanent residency, and I'll have citizenship within about 6 months. But I've got a lot of friends that come in on, apply for a visa and then work, and you can eventually work to permanent citizenship. So in the Netherlands, if you come in, there's a tax break for highly talented, and desirable employees, which are definitely in the digital and the data sector. You can apply for a visa, you can get it, you get a tax break. It's called the 30% ruling. So it gets your taxes more in line with the US tax rate. And you can have that tax break, I think, for 5 years, 3 to 5 years. But then after you've worked for 5 years, and I've got 2 friends have graduated, then you're eligible for permanent residency. And a lot of countries, my cousin's in Denmark, it's the same way. He's there on a work visa. If he stays for 5 years, he can be a permanent resident. But now there's a ton of countries, Malta, Portugal are the 2 you hear the most about, that are giving you, up to 2-year visas. There's Aruba in the Caribbean, and they even give you tax breaks. So Portugal doesn't tax foreign-based income. So if you applied for the visa, you have to have a certain amount of money, you come over, and then they don't double tax you on your US-based income. So, and there's a lot of resource. If you just search digital nomad, and I've given some of those to Kalia. There's a ton of resources about the countries. I know Italy's getting more progressive in trying to recruit people. Croatia is. So yeah, Ireland's kind of always been. Lots of opportunities. You just have to do the research. And I highly encourage people for doing the research and doing it right from the beginning, because if you get somewhere and you overstay and do it wrong, it's much harder to unwind yourself than doing it right from the start.
Yep.
It is, and it's also very confusing. Like Italy's, not so great with bureaucracy. So they're confusing. I know I was in the beginning trying to get my visa, and I heard a different story from each accountant or attorney I was talking to. So I would say go to a good agency to ensure that you're doing it right. And there are a lot of programs in Italy, but they're changing. It's going to get better, but it isn't there yet. They have some programs for entrepreneurs that make quite a bit of money, like over $1 million. So the digital nomad visa, they say, is coming. So it's supposed to get easier because it would be better for the country. They need it.
Interesting. Patty,
So in Mexico, it's pretty easy because you get 6 months right off the bat as a tourist when you come in. And I was living off that tourist visa for quite a while because I was traveling every month back to the States anyway, for a few days. But when COVID hit, I wasn't traveling, so I overstayed my visa, but it ended up costing me something like, I don't know, $20. And then it was all fine. So now in Mexico, if you want to go to Mexico, I have a temporary residence visa that I renew after the first year, and then I renew, and then I can get a permanent residency after 3 years. And every Mexican consulate, you have to apply for it in the States or wherever you are, whatever country you are, you have to apply for your visa there. And just to know about Mexico, every city has different requirements. So there isn't a standard. So actually Denver was the best. And I really tried to get an appointment there, stay and go visit Julie. But there weren't any appointments at the time that I needed to do it. So I ended up going to Laredo. And I probably, if I'd gone to Denver, I would have got a permanent residency right away. But I went to Laredo, Texas instead, and because I could just drive there and come back. And I ended up getting temporary. And it has to do with how much money in your accounts and how much, there's just look them up. There's just some different requirements. But Mexico's not that hard to get a visa for. And again, if you're traveling in and out every 6 months, then that's even easier.
let's talk a little bit about the tax man or tax men if you're living in 2 countries or living abroad.
Italy has a US tax treaty for no double taxation.
Yeah, and I use a tax guy who's lived here. He's from the States. He's got his own business and he's lived here, worked here for many, many years. And I basically just trust him to do my taxes. I don't know. I just know that he takes care of it. I know there's some issues about not having more than $10,000 in an account, in a bank account, which I end up, I have a Mexican bank account that I use for a volunteer project I do, which definitely has more than $10,000 coming through it. So, but he just says, no, all you have to do is just claim it. You know,
you just have to report on it.
Yeah,
you can have it. You just have to report to the US government. Yeah,
that's no problem. So I haven't had any issues, actually. Sid, you
Yeah,
probably know the most.
Yeah, I think might have been more complex, I would say. I mean, partially because I sold a company and that involved selling a company to a Canadian company while I was in the Netherlands, but had a US-based company. I think getting good, and you can get good tax advice from experienced people that aren't that expensive. So I mean, reaching out to the expat communities that you want to go join and asking for recommendations. And I've seen somebody who've asked any country you're interested in. If you go on Facebook, you type that country plus expat, you're going to find groups of people willing to connect. You know, for me, most countries I've lived in did have, so in short, as a US citizen, you always have to pay US taxes unless you're in a military. There's certain exempt categories, but in general, but most countries do have a tax treaty with the US, and usually that means you don't pay dual taxes. But there are loopholes in that, and depending on the assets that you own and where you own them. So I think it's just good going in and understanding the tax implications. For me in the Netherlands, the net of the two is I end up paying the higher tax rate, but I don't pay duplicate taxes. So the Netherlands, you end up paying in the 40%. And then if there's a country that doesn't have a tax treaty, I wouldn't make that a barrier to consideration. When we moved to the island of Jersey, they didn't have a dual tax treaty with the US. And I just went to the tax authority and said, okay, what's fair? And they said, what about an extra 12%? And I'm like, what about 7%? And so we agreed on an extra 10% tax I paid locally. And, you know, and it was like, we created a document. So I was there legally, I paid the tax happily. And, you know, so don't let those barriers concern you.
I think what's important is having a good advisor. You kept saying that in our prep calls, and I kept hearing that resonating.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about healthcare and health insurance. I saw that come up on the chat, I believe, too. Tell us about the quality of healthcare where you live.
It's awesome, and it costs $300 a month. I mean, it's different than the US, so you got to get used to. It's different, but it's not bad. It's awesome and inexpensive, but it's a part of your taxes that you pay.
So my husband had knee surgery here, and he went to a private doctor, so it's a little bit more expensive, and to pay for the operation fully was less than our deductible. And we had really high-end insurance in California. Like, we paid a lot for insurance. So even when you pay for a private doctor here, it's inexpensive and it's good care.
Yeah, I would say the same in Mexico. I would say that my doctors have been at least at minimum on par, if a couple of them have been way better than any doctor I've had in the States here. But I live right outside of Guadalajara, and the University of Guadalajara is a very, very well-respected med school. So we have fantastic healthcare here. And and dental care, the dental care has been amazing. And it's not that, it's not expensive. I did have knee surgery in the States under Medicare, so it was cheaper. But when I went to get the quote here in Mexico, again, the same thing as your experience, Christine, all in, it would have been, you know, it would have been totally doable to just pay for it here out of pocket. So it's, you know, I'm finding that even though if there's anything major like that, I would probably go back to the States to get it, just because I can get it for cheaper. You know, if it's super major, but, you know, it's, you know, $10-15 to go see a doctor. It's, you know, I had to have a CAT scan the other day, and it was $150 out of pocket. So.
Wow. Interesting. That's great. Okay. Patty, I know you're passionate about your community. Talk a little bit about giving back to the community down there.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I think is important to think about when you're moving to another country. And I'm here in Mexico, and when COVID broke out, I realized, you know, I'm in good shape. You know, I'm not worried about not having anything, but a lot of my neighbors in the village where I live are hand to mouth. They make money every day. They work as waitresses and caddies, and they sell tacos and taco stands, or, you know, different things and like that. And so a group of us expats and some other Mexican locals, we all got together and started a food bank, and to make sure that people had enough food, basically. And I think it's, you know, as soon as the economy started up, a lot of people just came to us and said, okay, we got our jobs now, so you can take us off the list. You know, people who are really very appreciative of the generosity, and also, you know, then they would say, or I can give my dispenser to this family because they, you know, they're sick or they need help. So what we discovered was there's a lot of people that have fallen through the cracks here in this village, that a lot of families will take care of their elderly, or they'll take care of each other. You don't see homeless like you do in the States. People are very poor, but everyone has somewhere to live or to sleep, to be. But I think it's, you know, when we come in and do our work here, we're taking advantage of the low cost of living and some of the features that the country offers. And I think it's really a wonderful experience to actually get grounded into the local community when you look for ways to give back. So where I live, most expats all volunteer doing something. There's a couple of shelters for animals, animal rescue shelters. There's one for children for helping children who need medication, niños incapacitados. Ours is Food Bank Lakeside, and we provide staples. It dispenses for 700 families a month in 7 different communities around the lake. And we provide a hot meal for about 800 children 5 days a week in some of the poorer communities across the lake. So a lot of volunteers are, you know, help with teaching English and, you know, different things like that. So what I would just say that one of the most satisfying things about living here has been really embedding myself in the local community, and, you know, and finding out how you can support people, and, you know, working with other people in the community. And it's all, what we do is very local driven. Like we might collect donations and we get organized, but we let the locals decide what's needed, you know, and who needs it and where it goes. Like we don't decide that, because, you know, I mean, I wouldn't know how to do that, but it's a wonderful way to give back, and especially if you're getting the benefit of living there.
I asked Patty one time, I said, so are you coming back when you get older? And, you know, and she goes, why would I do that? The community here takes care of the elderly.
Yeah.
She said, it's just amazing. So you just stay down there and we'll come
Yep.
down with you.
You come visit me. And it's spring year round, so the weather's fantastic.
All right, final question, and then we're going to open up and let Ms. Kalia put some questions at us. But are you going to return to the States full time ever? Just answered that for you, huh, Patty? Nope.
No. Oh,
I'm not that certain. I don't plan that far ahead. Niels and I've lived in, I think, been married 19 years and lived in 17 different places. So yeah.
You also have a home in Nebraska too, though, that you,
Yeah.
so that's a little bit different, but
Yeah, you've got Nebraska. That's an amazing place that you have. I
Yeah.
don't have anything like that there.
Yeah.
That would be
All right.
different. If I had that, it would be different. But I've also not lived anywhere longer than 8 years in my life.
Yeah.
After I moved out, you know, moved out. So who knows where I'll be next.
okay, ladies, we're going to open it up. Let Kalia open up with some questions. Good
Doing my
job on
best
the
to keep-
timing. I think we're on schedule.
Doing great. Doing my best to keep all the questions organized, but there are some common themes that are coming through. And so one of the questions that we're getting is about language. So Patty is in Mexico, and how do you speak the language? Same for Christine, same for Sid. Do you speak the language? Has it been a barrier or a benefit based on if you do or do not?
I'm learning. Sorry.
Yeah, Duolingo, right?
Duolingo, and I'm actually going to start taking some classes. I go down every day and try to speak to the locals, but it is a barrier without a doubt. I'm way more dependent on my husband, which is difficult. But really, even if I spoke the language to understand technical things like, you know, around learning things about the property, the electrical system, like it's difficult. Even if I spoke better Italian, I wouldn't understand to that level, or going to a doctor. So that part is a barrier, and I'm trying to improve on it, and I need to work harder at it. That's one of my goals over the next year.
Where I live, so many people speak English that it's not that hard. But I practice Duolingo, and I talk with everyone I can in Spanish. Even if they speak English, I know they speak English, I still respond in Spanish, because the way you learn is by practicing. And you would be surprised at how much you can communicate with a few words and hand signals. And I mean, I just talked to a carpenter yesterday about refinishing some wooden bowls. And it was like, how am I going to talk about what I want him to do, you know? But somehow with a few words and some hand signals, we got it all done, you know?
Sid,
I
I feel
was-
sorry for you, of all three of you women. That is one
Yeah.
hard language.
Yeah, but yeah, so everywhere I lived either spoke English, or I mean, Curacao and Netherlands, almost everybody speaks English. But I did during COVID, and because of to get citizenship, I needed to be able to pass a certain amount of Dutch proficiency. And I found through an expat friend an amazing tutor. And you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday for an hour, hour and a half, she hammered Dutch words into my thick skull. And my relationship with my neighbors, we live in a town of about 15,000 people. And we have some elderly neighbors, and it makes all the difference. Like, they are so happy when I speak to them in Dutch. They correct the little neighbor kids. They'll clap if I actually say a word correctly. Like, it has changed the degree of connection. You know, with people, just my you know, commitment to being in the Netherlands, which they think Dutch is definitely a part of. So I'd encourage people to not wait. My cousin who moved to Denmark, I told him, like, do it immediately. You know, don't wait as long as I did, because once you get in a groove of speaking English, it actually works against you.
But there's no one that speaks English in my town.
Yeah, it's harder for me to hear. So I think I have to actually go to Puebla or one of the other towns to do an immersion class to get me to the next level, and then come back. And it's harder. And it's harder for you, Christine, right? Because
No one in my town speaks English.
yeah,
Not a
but,
single, like,
but then Christian will speak
true,
Italian, right?
true. Yeah.
Yeah, but he's over in the States and she's alone. So
Oh, he is. Okay.
you know, when he comes back. and
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
And Florence, of course, everyone speaks English, but this is a small town, and I have to, like, plan even what I'm going to order, like,
Yeah, in advance. Yeah.
translate everything, you know, pounds, and I'm still trying to translate it all.
I
But
asked
Google
for kilo.
Translate is
Google
amazing.
Translate.
Google Translate is an amazing
Yeah, it is.
tool to use now, and you can even take a picture, like, of a prescription or of a report, a radiology report, and it'll translate that.
I go
remember
in with a picture of the cow, the butcher picture, to the meat market, because the cuts of meat are different, right?
ribs.
So I explain exactly what I want.
I remember my first trip to Italy, probably about 35 years ago. I was waiting in line in the supermarket, and I ordered a kilo of prosciutto. And the guy standing next to me goes, no. So what else you
Okay.
got, Miss Kaylee?
All right, so this one might be more of a question for Patty, but I see a few questions coming in from Megan, from Cynthia, and from, I think, Masoom, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, about being single and moving abroad. So there's questions around, is it, you know, it can be a little hard to take a financial risk, and it's a little bit more daunting. Do you have any advice around that? You know, same question about moving abroad solo. And then Masoom is saying, any specific advice for single women, or perhaps young women or women of color that are interested in moving abroad?
Well, you know, obviously, you know, if you pick where you go, and, you know, it depends on where you go. Like, I came here because I had a friend who already lived here. And so I came into a community, you know, of women, of single women. And I mean, there are some guys, some of them are married too, but definitely I came into a community of single women. So you really need to, you know, it's important for you to see if it's easy. It's easy here for a single woman to come because there's so many things going on. There's so many activities. There's so many groups. There's just so many ways to meet people, and people are really friendly. And you'll find the expat lifestyle wherever you go around the world. Expats are really friendly and welcoming. It's easier to meet people, I think, in other countries than it is. I lived in Toronto for 2.5 years. I guess that was sort of an expat. I didn't even think of it that way, but it was hard for me to meet locals because they have their own, they already have their own communities. And if you're not introduced, then it's not proper, like when you walk down the street. But here you just can meet people really easily. And there's single women of color here. There's, I don't see that as a barrier. And in terms of financial risk, well, actually, this is, it's more of a financial risk to stay in the States than it is to come here, and especially to Mexico, because the cost of living is so much cheaper. So.
Great answer.
Okay, so I guess we could jump into, I have a few questions coming through about having to care for an elderly parent in the States. So Carla is asking or mentioning that she spends a considerable amount of time abroad in a prior chapter of her life, but now she's kind of wondering on how to deal with caregiving for aging parents. Any
That's a
advice
hard
on
one.
that?
That's
Yeah,
a hard
Julie,
one.
you've got a lot of experience in that one, traveling and having your mom being, you're caring
Yep.
for her as well.
Yeah, I didn't Nomad as much when she was alive. But when we did Nomad, I definitely I have a great community here of friends, and my friends would go. She was in a nursing home, and they would visit with her. So Carla, it's hard, but there's a point in your life where you have to make decisions, and the decision to help your parents is probably the best one.
When we lived on the island of Jersey, which was really hard to get anywhere from. My mom was diagnosed with cancer, and so we moved to Curacao because it was inexpensive flights to Denver, and then a drive to see my mom. So we actually changed our expatness and location to make it still be remote, but still be easy. And again, if you work with a company that's kind of always allows for remoteness, like my current, he doesn't care if I'm in Nebraska or in the Netherlands, as long as the work gets done. So if you have the right culture, in a way, it actually, to me, allowed me to be a more caring daughter. So I was still able to live overseas, but then I was able to spend stretches of time back in Nebraska with my parents and still work but be with them. So I think, again, it's about intelligent design of the work that you do, and also looking at the expense of commuting back and forth if you do want to spend time.
One of the things that Julie mentioned earlier is the elder care in Mexico, and it is extraordinary. The care for the elderly here is really high quality. And so I've met people who moved down here because they were actually moving their parents down to Mexico for their elder care, for their, for the nursing home, or there's small communities, small nursing homes. Actually, right next door is a big house that they turned into, I think they have 4 or 5 people in there that they take care of. And so a lot of people said that they weren't intending to move down here, but when they came down with their parents, they ended up buying a house and just staying after their parents died. So that's kind of a interesting. I don't know if your parents, Carla, are interested or would be open to that, but I talked to people who said it was so much better when they brought their mom down, because now she's got a beautiful garden to sit in and to look out, and people who are so kind, who take care of them, and it's just such a better situation than what the nursing home and the different options were in the States. So that's another thing to think about.
Yep, great answers. So we did talk a little bit about healthcare. We talked about, kind of how do you assess the quality of the healthcare, and I think we've already answered that one, at least for your specific countries that you reside in. But there is a question coming through from Jen about prescriptions and getting medication if you need it unexpectedly. Like, how's that work out in each of your countries?
I mean, I've had a cousin visit who needed medical care, and it was, extremely low cost, even though he had no insurance, probably less than a copay in the US. So I think it depends on the country and the system, but I wouldn't see it as a barrier.
Yeah, it's inexpensive here, and many drugs, actually the pharmacist can write you the prescription. So, which is fantastic. So there's not a need for a trip to the doctor for everything.
That's great.
I would say that in most cases, you just go to the pharmacist and you don't need a prescription here. Some things they really regulate, like it's the opposite as in the States. They heavily regulate any opiate type of pain med. I mean, they take your license. It's almost impossible to get. And but I've had thyroid medication for 30 years, and I think that that's the same I would pay in the States. I mean, under insurance in the States it might be cheaper, but it's about the same, and a lot of other things are way cheaper.
Okay. So, well, we've got more questions. My cat wants to ask a question. She wants to know which is the best country. Actually, there was a
They're
question
watching you with your
about
cat.
bringing a dog. There was.
And
a
I'm watching
question of
Christine
somebody-
with her wine, and it's
Yep.
damn good wine. She's sitting there
Oh,
drinking.
it's water. It's water. It's a pool glass.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we know that. We know that.
Oh, look, it's water.
Yeah.
So
I can ask the dog question if you want.
Yeah,
And we
yeah.
had a dog and two cats almost everywhere we lived. And you just kind of, the UK was a little bit harder. There was a quarantine period for the dog, but everywhere else you just had to get a certain amount of tests and medical certificates before you went. And then you would show up and present all the documents and get a little pet passport. It was actually, Niels and I joke, it's been easier for our pets to move between countries than for us as humans. So I wouldn't let that be a barrier, but make sure and do the research.
Yeah, I just brought in my two cats and it was super easy. And I just recently brought over a puppy, an 8-week puppy for a friend of mine from the States. And it was just a piece of cake, total piece of cake. The guy at the customs airport here who does that is a big, sweetie pie. So he basically loves up all the animals that are coming in and kind of does the paperwork in between.
Good man. We got
have about
4 minutes.
one-
Yeah. One more
let's do
question.
just one more. I know we've talked a lot about finding a remote job or making, maybe making a switch of a job so that you can work in a different country. What about if you're self-employed? And I feel like this one is, I'm not sure that we touched upon it yet, but if you're self-employed, specifically, Nancy's asking about having an LLC. She's curious about how taxes might change if she was to cross the pond.
I still have an LLC in the States. I still get paid through that. It's really not any different. I keep a bank account in the States. I just have all my business banking is still in my US account.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. I have a Corp S and an LLC, and because of the taxation, the treaty, so I pay the taxes in the US.
And
So
I've done
Katie-
both. I had an LLC in the US, and then recently when I started my consulting business, there were some tax advantages I could take up in the Netherlands by starting sole proprietorship in Holland. So it actually reduced my tax rate. So I went that way instead of the LLC in the US. But yeah, all doable.
Okay. Kaylee, I noticed that we have many questions that haven't been answered. We figured that was going to happen. We said that right before we got started. It's the best way for people to send them to info@greatdatamines, and we'll try to get them
sure.
answers and get it back.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I can add that into the chat. You can always reach us at info@greatdatamines. I was able to capture a few more that are sort of specific that we can likely send out a response after the fact, if assuming that we have the proper email address and everything. But you can always send us questions there. And then I know all of you ladies sent over your LinkedIn handles. So I wanted to add these into the chat as well. Is that okay with everybody? If anybody has any
Sure.
questions, here is everybody's LinkedIn's. So
Great.
if you want to reach with people, then that's
And
great. And
then-
we're getting a lot of positive feedback from everybody saying that they love
Yeah.
this discussion, and clearly
So
we all have
interested-
wanderlust.
So I'm interested in who on this event is interested in becoming an expat or a nomad.
I would like to. I think about it personally
Me.
all the time. Yeah, I know you. I
Yeah,
have a young
me,
family.
me.
That might be another question too, is like having kids and, you know, having them too far away from the rest of their crew, like cousins and all that stuff. But I don't think there's anything you can't.
And in closing, I want to leave you with a statement that Patty made that I love. It's not what you're running from, but it's what you're running to. And I love that. So thank you for joining us today. We had a great time. Miss you, girls.
Thanks, Julie.
Been
Thanks,
great.
Leah.
Thank
What
you.
was fun.
Love you
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thanks
Great
everyone for
time.
Bye.
joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.